I wasn't doubting her. So I guess we really weren't disagreeing. Here is the best I've been able to collect data-wise measuring human pregnancy. They're not all the same. Human pregnancies are not all the same, obviously. Some are longer, some are shorter. And this is simply looking at the length of time a human pregnancy is. Simply length of time, no other factors. Okay? Roughly, it's bell-shaped. Roughly bell-shaped, which means we've got an average, which is about 266 days. Somebody asked me what that was in weeks last time. I forgot. That's about 38 weeks. 38 weeks. Now, some people say, I heard it's 40. I heard it's 36. When you average the results in the journals, it comes out to be about 38 weeks. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to get in a fist fight about it because I almost got my ass kicked a couple years ago. There's a plus or minus around that, and the plus or minus is about 16 days. That's very, very large, yes? That's very, very large. 16 days is more than 2 weeks plus or minus.
Yeah.
So you start spreading that around 38 weeks, and all of a sudden the 40 weeks are in there, the 36 weeks are in there. Everybody's in within one standard deviation. Everybody's like, okay, I can accept that now, so we're good. There's also a problem with this model, maybe, and that you have to know when day 0 was, which is sometimes a matter of conjecture, right? You know, you have to know when conception happened, which is not always an exact science. So this is based on medical journals I've consumed. Hopefully they control for all those variables. What I want to look at with human pregnancy are 2 things. Preemie births, which are the shortest possibles, and induced births, which technically I guess would be the longest possible births, I'm assuming. We'll get back to that momentarily. Let's talk about preemie births first. Now, again, preemie, when I say the word preemie birth or preemie baby, what do you think of?
An early delivery.
Exactly, not the term.
Right.
What does not the term mean? 265 days, Linda? 264 days? See, go ahead, give me.
Within the 2 weeks.
Within the 2 weeks, okay, good. So there's a low end of that 2 weeks around the normal?
Right.
Good. I never knew how to answer that question. I never knew how early was too early. It's the question that is asked all the time, beyond a reasonable doubt, right? This is why we have trial by jury. He's guilty. Well, you assume he's innocent until you can't assume he's innocent anymore. So the question is, we assume the birth is fine until it's so short, or the pregnancy is fine until it's so short that we can't term it fine anymore. So I went online and did some research. The most common result for preemie births was the ones that are the 5th percentile. That's the cutoff. The 5th percentile, that means the shortest 5%. That's what I would consider the modal definition of what a preemie birth is. The problem is, you can't tell an expectant mother that. You don't go to her and say, it's the 5th percentile. You gotta give her a what? You gotta give her a day. You got to make it to this day, and then you're not considered preemie anymore. So your job as a medical professional is to be able to go from that to something you can actually tell someone who's worried. Make sense? Forwards or backwards, probably. Vote for backwards from Gail. All in favor? Why is it backwards? Tell me why, Jay. Tell me why. Because I gave you a percent. It's the bottom 5th percentile. Or that's redundant. It's the 5th percentile. It's the bottom 5th. Or the bottom 5%. Fair enough? All we've got to do is turn that into a day number and tell the mom, okay, here's the cutoff. Anything past here isn't preemie. Now, I'm not saying this is the best answer. This is what I was getting fighting with the midwife. Well, that's ridiculous because, time out. I'm just going by the definition I pulled offline. Her point was that as soon as you don't call a baby a preemie anymore, suppose you beat that date by 1 day, then they're not privy to all the care that a preemie baby would get. I'm like, well, that's something to talk to doctors about, right? Not the interpreters of what the doctors are saying. And that's what she settled down a little bit. I love midwives. We used one. She was fantastic. This one I think hates me now. That's okay. It's okay. I can live with it. All right. Pregnancy. Whoops. Let's turn this off so we can see. Pregnancy. It's a backwards problem. So what do we start with? What do we start with? Area under the curve. Beautiful. We're taking all of the context away and starting on our bell curve with 0 in the middle. Where is the shortest 5% of pregnancies? Where do they live on this curve? Left side. Linda's cueing me down this side. I love that. Whereabouts? I'm going to put it right here because it doesn't matter anyway. That'll give me precision that I need to worry about. Shade the area.
Second deviation.
Oh, why do you say that, Lloyd? Thank you for saying that. Why do you say that? Did you hear what Lloyd said? He said second deviation. What are you thinking of, friend?
Because it's to the end of the bell curve.
This is one of those 243, 244 crossover things. He's here in 5%, and the opposite of 5% is 95%. And you guys have been trained for a while now that 95% is within. Correct. This is what I call a one-sided standard deviation measure, because the 5% is here and the 95% goes all the way into this tail. So in other words, your 95% would be here. You see all that extra area over here? I'm shoving it into this tail, which means this guy has to move this way. It's not quite down there at -2 because the 5% isn't symmetric. When you do your 95% between 2, that means there's 2.5 up here and 2.5 down here. That's different than having all 5% here. Does that make sense? They can bring that up. It's a great connection. And this is one of those 244 things we struggle with for a while in 244 is what happens when you take all the area and put it on one side? Well, it has to become asymmetric. So you shove it into this side. That's what, when Johnny over there did 10%, 10 and 90, you could also cut 10% off of this side. Here we go. And this will be -1.28. And that means that 90% of the data is within 1.28 standard deviations. That's not one of the ones I made you memorize back in the day because it's too weird. 1.28 is a weird number. So that's the difference between having 2 breakpoints and just 1. I hope I didn't make it worse by explaining that.
No.
It was a great point you brought up, Lloyd. Thank you for that. In fact, did everybody get what Lloyd was saying? I loved it, actually. So in other words, if we had another 5% over here, you'd then trap 90% between, not 95, which means if 95 is -2 to 2, 90 is going to be in a little bit. The question is how far in? Well, that's where this guy comes in. He tells us how far in. Cool? Good. Thank you for that question. Let's figure out how far in. Well, I don't know. So, there we go. It's backwards for sure. Area shades to the left. Yes. 5%. Make sure you put 0.05. That's easy to forget the O. Of course, as soon as you draw it, you'll know you forgot it. There it is. It's not in focus. All right. -1.64. If it was down at -2, that would be your 0.025%. So -1.64. That's your z-score. That chops off 5% in the bottom tail. Positive 1.64 would chop off 5% in the other tail. But we don't need that tail. We don't need the top 5%, we need the bottom 5%. This was a nod to Linda's question, which was a very, very negative versus the positive. Very good question earlier. Cool? So what do you tell the mother? Well, as long as you're more than 1.64 standard deviations away from average, everything's fine. No, you don't tell her that. Last thing's what punch in the face. What do we do with that number?
We put it in the formula.
Yes, you convert it to something that you can actually deal. We don't want to be here. We want to be here. We want to have an average of 266, right? And we have to have a standard deviation of 16 days. So 16 up from 266 is going to be what? 282. 16 down is going to be 250. 16 up again is going to be 298, if I did that right. 16 down again is going to be 234. So we're somewhere between these guys, aren't we? Because 1.6, this guy corresponds to -1. This is 0, this is -2. So 1.64 is 2/3 of the way down from this guy. So I guess that's about 10. So we have to just do, let's go over here. Let's do the conversion. 1.64 equals that, minus that 266 all over the 16. 16 times that guy, plus the 266. That's a negative. So we get 16 plus 26. 240, 239, 238. What do we get? 239? We'll call 240 then. To the nearest day. Now you got a number you can tell somebody. As long as you make it 240 days, you are out of the preemie cutoff. So that's it. If you assume 30 days in a month, that's exactly 8 months, isn't it? Yeah. So 8 months. 240 days, boom, that's the cutoff. And this again is kind of what we got in the fight about the whole, that's not right. I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying these numbers they gave me, based on their numbers, that's right. But that's not right. Okay, sit down. Put the sharp objects down, please. Fair? Decent, maybe. Ask me questions if you have them. This is a good time to take 5, walk around. You all look pissed. Let's go take a walk. Take a walk, get some air, go walk in the fog, come back.
I was thinking this would be a good thing to have for girls that get buried.
I think this is a good thing in general. I mean, anytime you take any human body measurement, like whether it's height, weight, head girth, pregnancy, development of limbs, they generally are bell-shaped. That's the thing. They generally follow a bell curve. And if you understand how to work on that bell curve, you don't have to just accept the numbers they give you. You can double-check the numbers they give you. So this is what I use at Max's checkup. I mean, we were actually doing this with Max weeks ago with the head girth and the length and the width and all. But I didn't bring it up then. We didn't need to. But this works.